Welcome to the Edge of Greatness podcast. The path to greatness is never linear and requires patience and consistency. Join us on our journey as we peel back the layers of success, searching for that elusive core. Each week we will explore a different component of greatness, utilizing experts who have traveled some part of the path that we are all on. We aim to uncover insights into the areas of leadership, coaching, performance, overcoming failure, the power of habits, and so much more. We are all on the edge of greatness. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I have with me a very special guest, Tami Matheny. Tami is the owner and director of Refuse to Lose Coaching, as well as an author of The Confident Athlete, This is Good, and the companion piece, The Confidence Journal. She also works as a mental performance coach and has worked with multiple teams and countless athletes, developing confidence, improving focus, motivation, mental toughness, leadership, teamwork, and more. So Tami, thank you so much for taking time to join me today. I appreciate it.
Looking forward to being here, Charles.
Absolutely. So what I want to start off with is while I was doing some research and looking into what you do, I noticed that you ran 40 miles, and I need to know, what was that like for you? Because when I think about doing that, the first thing that comes to mind is, all right, I'm gonna jump in my car. It's more than 5. So tell me a little bit about that journey for you.
Oh, it was an amazing journey. Obviously, during the training, you don't jump from 1 mile to 40 miles, so it was a long process to get up to the 40 miles. But I really learned a lot about myself. And there were many moments where I thought I was crazy and why was I doing this? But when I crossed that finish line, it was the biggest drug that I probably could have taken. Just the euphoria that came over me. It was amazing. So it was worth it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about that journey, because obviously you probably had ups and downs along the way while you were training and had to deal with the mental part, because anytime you're running long distance, I am not a long distance runner. If it's more than 100 meters or I'm not being chased by a bear, don't count me in. But what I want to know is, like, when you're working and training to go to that distance, obviously you're going to have like long runs and short runs and ups and downs from just the wear and tear. Tell me a little bit about that journey.
I really had to use everything that I preach and teach to my athletes. And it's such a mental game. There were days where I did not want to run, obviously, but it was coming up with those tricks or techniques to keep me focused on my vision. I created a vision board with my ultimate goal, with positive sayings and motivations, to help me through it. I changed my self-talk. Every time I started to say, oh, why am I doing this? I would say, I get to do this. I get to do this. And then I would just think about how I was going to feel when I finished that run, and, what I could eat afterwards. That was a strong motivator. I can have this whole piece of pizza after I run. This whole pizza after I run 40 miles. So there were a lot of tricks that I had to play, with my brain. It was fun, but there were obviously some bad days as well. And I had to learn to give myself a little grace. And every once in a while, okay, let's take the day off. My body's telling me it needs a break.
Yeah, and I think that's valuable for a lot of athletes and coaches to hear, is that it's not always going to be feel good moments. It's not always going to be the highs, but sometimes you have to work through the tough stuff to be successful. So what I need to know now is, did it feel like you imagined it would when you crossed, or was it even better?
It was even better. I cannot put into words. You heard me try to struggle, and that was, a handful of years ago, and I still haven't been able to come up with the words that do it justice.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So what I want to transition into now is talking about confidence, because obviously when it comes to performance, having that positive mindset and having that confidence in your abilities gives you the ability to overcome the obstacles, because you can bounce back. But how do we get to that state? Because I feel like a lot of kids these days don't carry that confidence, and they ride the wave of either I'm playing good or I'm playing bad. And how do we help them find their way?
I call it the roller coaster. It seems like, and I know this from my experience in high school, when you hit a shot, you're up at the top of the roller coaster. Maybe you miss your next shot, you're down. Coach tells you you're doing well, you're up. Coach gets on you, you're down. Much less the winning and losing. And we become so focused on results, and we base our self-worth, our confidence on results, instead of realizing that it's something that comes from within. And confidence doesn't mean you're always going to have success. It just means that you're going to be able to handle the adversity and the failures. I don't like to call them failures, but not getting the results you want so you can bounce back quicker. So through long discovery, because I had that struggle, I thought there had to be a better way. And informally, I spent my college years of just studying what makes this person confident and what can I take from them. And I was able to nail in 4 different aspects that if we work on daily, and Charles, I think that's the key. It's the consistent approach, not just, oh, when I'm struggling, I'm going to try this.
Right.
But those 4 keys are your self-talk, your body language, your image of yourself, visualizing things come true. And then the last one is preparation. It's really hard to be confident if you haven't put in the work.
No, yeah, I definitely think that the preparation piece is the one that most people live on, and they feel prepared, so they're confident, but they don't do the first 3 as well. So let's go through some of those first ones. The first one you mentioned was the self-talk.
Yes.
Okay.
Self-talk. So all of those thoughts we have every day.
Okay. And what's a tip that we can do to transition from the self-talk that they're currently doing to a more productive version of it? What are we trying to get to?
One of the first pieces of advice I give clients that I work with is to wear a rubber band. I just popped mine, or I still wear one every day. And it's just using it as a mechanism to realize when your thoughts are negative or unproductive. Because I'm a firm believer in what I call P squared, positive or productive. I don't think all of your self-talk should be positive. Not everything is positive, but at least a productive comment. Mm-hmm. And so we have to become aware first. So the first thing that I have athletes do is every time you have that negative thought or speak a negative thought, to pop that rubber band and then replace it with a positive or productive. Like if I miss a shot, not why did I miss that shot, or I'm stupid because I missed that shot, but a productive thought that will help me hit the next shot. So that's the first piece that I always start with for self-talk, because we just have to unwire those habits that we're used to thinking.
Yeah, it's like we talked about earlier. It's easy to ride that wave of, oh, I'm doing good, so talk good, and then I'm doing bad, so let's talk bad, and not paying attention to how that sounds or what's actually being said and how that can fuel the next piece. Because I coach baseball right now, and actually this last weekend we just had a doubleheader, and I watched as the athletes that continued to compete the whole game didn't show the emotion of the negative moments, but the ones who struggled yesterday, they would have body language issues for sure when things didn't go what they expected them to go like. And I'm actually going to keep track this next weekend of all the different things that I notice as far as positive and negative, and show them at the end how it affects, because I have a feeling it's going to make a big impact. But to get back on track here is, I like the idea of centering yourself with a band or something like that to bring you back in. Are there any other tools besides the band? Because some sports, they don't let you wear a band. What's something else that we can maybe use to help kind of snap them back into place?
I think anything that gives you that visual.
Okay.
A lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of sports while you're competing can't wear the band. But I've had some baseball players I work with that'll write P square on their wrist, or put it on a piece of tape on their helmet or bat, but just something that's visual that reminds you to stay positive and productive. I think having, accountability partners when you are doing it with a team is powerful too, because when I'm negative, I'm in the moment, I'm in my emotion. So sometimes we need help in getting out of that. And I think, and I know I was guilty of this when I first started coaching, my immediate reaction was, hey, be positive or be confident. But that tends to have the opposite effect, because I think it frustrates the athlete even more, because it's not like they want to be negative or want to not be confident. And so when we tell them to be, it's like, oh, I'm trying, and it creates more frustration instead of a simple, hey, change your self-talk, positive, productive. I think that gives them something they can then focus on.
I agree. I think that if we point something out that's going wrong, it then festers in their mind that it's noticed and now it's affecting everything. Especially at the younger levels too, because they carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. They expect to be perfect, and then the coach goes, well, you're not doing this right, do this. And now it's like it's all on top of them, and they're like, well, this isn't going well. So I like that. So let's move on to number two. Number two was what was that? What was number two?
Your body language
Body
and
language,
how
which
you
is actually
carry
perfect.
yourself, the gestures. And you just mentioned it. You said that some of the guys that didn't do well had the negative body language.
Yeah.
And our self-talk and our body language are teammates. So if I have negative body language, it's sending a message to my brain, which is going to create a negative thought. I call it be big. So if I can be big while I'm out there on the field, then it automatically is changing my self-talk to be more confident, to be more productive and positive. So how we carry ourselves goes a long way. First of all, it sends a message to your opponent. We've all been there when you're playing or competing, and an athlete walks up to the plate and is kind of shrunken down a little bit, looks a little timid. Then that just gives your athletes a boost of confidence, and vice versa. So we want to make sure we're not giving the other team, other opponent, that confidence by making sure we stay strong. But more importantly, it sends a strong message to your brain. So really trying to be big. An activity that I do or challenge athletes to do is start the day or start the competition off in a power pose. Superman, Superwoman, whatever you want to call it, but just a power pose for about 2 or 3 minutes. I worked with a softball team this past year that when they would call out their names and they would line up on the third base dugout, they would come out and get in their best Wonder Woman pose. It was pretty impressive to the other team. But again, more importantly, it started them off as confidently as they could. And Charles, I'm not a scientist and I don't know exactly how it works, but studies have shown that if we stay in a strong pose, then it sends messages to our brain to be more confident.
Yeah, no, I could see that, because I think if you watch sports, if you watch people who are doing well and you watch people competing at a high level, or even if somebody takes the stage to give a presentation, so get away from the sports world altogether, if they stand tall and they show that they're comfortable and confident and they have this look about them, the presentation is usually delivered with some strength. Where I've seen people who they don't look very confident in being up there, or they're not comfortable in being in front of people, and you see them start to slouch down or shrink up, and then they stumble and stammer, and you're like, whoa, okay, I've seen you talk better than this. I know something's not right. And for me, when I was playing, anytime if I was pitching and I saw a kid like smash his bat on the ground, or like his shoulders slump after a pitch, I was like, well, you're mine now. I own this game. You might as well go sit back down. So, the upright posture, that's great. And the body language, what's something that we can do to help trigger, I guess, a reframe of the body posture if they start to slip and get in the moment of negativity? Because that's something that's tough, is that, you may start with that nice body posture, but then you have a negative moment occur, and your natural instinct is, because you've done it for so long, to like pound your glove or to throw your hat down or stomp your feet or something of that nature. And you don't even maybe know you're doing it. How can we help redirect that energy and maybe train a new pattern for them?
One thing that I encourage is having a reset button, mistake ritual, some people call it. But as soon as you make that mistake, you're shifting your focus to doing a physical and verbal response. So that physical response may be popping that rubber band if you can. It could be, I've seen people flick it off their shoulder like no big deal. It could be staring up at the sky. First of all, that gets your body big again when you stare at the sky, but also there's something in your brain, a mechanism that drops that negative thought you have. It could be slapping your thigh. I mean, there's numerous things that you can do that are productive without slamming the bat or slamming the helmet down. And then you follow it up with a verbal response, next play, or flush it, or something that might make you laugh.
Yeah.
I think, athletes think it's not right to smile when you mess up, but sometimes that is the easiest way to reset. It just tells your brain you're okay and relaxes your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm a big, sports are meant to be fun, even when you're competing at a high level. If you're not enjoying it, one, it's going to be harder to compete consistently. And two, it's a game still. Like, I know that if you get to the highest level, and you're getting paid, your job's on the line. But at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy what you're doing in that aspect, you're never going to reach your full potential. The guys who are really good enjoy either winning or competing or practicing or performing, whatever it may be. They enjoy some part of the game. And it's funny that you said the laughter piece, because there's a kid on the team who always looks serious. And it's been my mission since I started, just to make him laugh during the game. And one of the coaches was like, "You'll never get that to happen." And yesterday I had him laughing and goofing around. I'm like, never going to happen, huh? So
yeah, that was your win.
That was my win. We lost both games, but at the same time, I'm like, I saw some positive things here and I think we're going to be all right. But the body language piece kills me. And it's one of those pieces that I'm really trying to help address. So I'm glad that we touched on some of those things, because it's hard to get young kids to stay positive. They expect success all the time. Have you had that experience with that, where they're just always thinking they're going to be perfect?
Right. Yeah. But that's our society. We've created immediate results right now. Or we move on to something else, or we get frustrated.
Yeah, no, that's true. There's definitely a lot of that now. So number 3, what was number 3? We went back to, we had the positive self-talk, the positive body language, and then the third one was
how you see yourself, the image. I call it see it, be it. And whatever we can see in our mind, we can be. And that does include visualizing how you want things to go. But more importantly, it's the image you have of yourself. And I think too often, especially younger athletes, the image they have of themselves is what they've been told by other people, or what they assume they look like to other people. So the first activity I have for See It, Be It is to have the athlete write in as much detail as possible what the confident self looks like when they are at their best, or what they want that confident athlete to look like. And just in detail what that looks like, whether they're smiling, whether they're loose, body language. And then I want them to read that over and over and over, so they can start to plant that image in their mind. So that gives them that blueprint that their body and mind will start to follow, if we can get it, repeated in their brain enough.
I like that. I think I might have to use that one today. Send them a little homework assignment.
It really is good, because they base, I shouldn't say that's being very generalistic, but I think the majority of our youth base their image off of what people have told them, instead of what do you want to look like? What do you want to be? And okay, let's create that then.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that with sports these days, the level of competition has gone up so fast at young ages that you're right. They carry their self-image with the success of their performance, not with anything else that matters within the moment. It's just all, whether did they win or lose, did they perform well or did they not? And there's this disconnect between who they really are and the performance person. Those are two separate things. You can be a very good athlete, a very competent player, and have a poor performance. You see it all the time. I mean, watch any golf tournament. You're going to see a guy who's ranked high do poorly and not make the cut. It's just part of the game. But we don't have that mindset for whatever reason.
Yeah, the best. It's not that they don't have bad days. They just minimize the bad days and bounce back quicker.
Yeah. So I was actually listening to a conversation on Clubhouse before we came on, and it kind of translates into this conversation. Is can you perform well when you're not at your best? And I think that that's a valuable thing for our athletes is we always have this conversation like, oh, I feel good, I feel ready. But what happens when you don't feel good and don't feel ready? Can you still be that confident athlete when you take the field to know that I may only be at a 4 out of 10 today, but my 4 is going to be good enough to make me have an opportunity to succeed? Have you had these conversations with athletes before, and how do you help them go out there and just give it what they've got on the day that they've got it?
It's interesting that you said that, because I think that's been one of the biggest pieces I've been talking about lately. And I read a book recently, and I'm going to have to find the pitcher's name because it has slipped my brain, but it was a Hall of Fame baseball pitcher. And he said on a given season, he was going to get about 20 starts. And 4 to 5 of those starts were going to be lights out. He was going to be that Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. And then about 4 or 5 of those starts, he just wasn't going to have it, and he would probably be pulled early. But the rest of them, he wasn't going to be at his best, but his mindset was going to be what determined the success he had. So this is a Hall of Fame pitcher who's saying about 1/4 of the time he is at his best and just performing exactly how he wants. And the key and the message that he was saying was the rest of it is all how he responds. And too many of our youth, and I know at times when I was, playing in college and high school, I was guilty of this as well. But oh man, I'm not perfectly on today, and we start focusing on that, and that grows. One of my favorite sayings is, "What we focus on grows." So instead of, man, this isn't working like it did the other day when I was lights out, we want to focus on what is working, what we do have, and try to build on that. And I think one of the keys in doing that is learning to stay in the moment. One of the top characteristics of people when they're in the zone is that they were in the present moment. They don't remember much. They were just there and present. So I think if we can teach our athletes how to stay more and more in the present moment, then that keeps us from judging, oh, I have my A game, or man, I'm just not on today. Because if we allow ourselves, if I'm a pitcher, that can change pitch to pitch. Oh, yeah. But my mind creates it as good or bad. And so when it's good, you can really get the roll in that way and the momentum. But when you're not as on, unfortunately, that bad momentum, steps into. So staying in the present moment would be my short answer. It took me a long time to get to that short answer, but
no, I like the way you got to it though, because it makes sense. And I love the idea of the 25% of the time you're going to be at your peak, 25% of the time you're really just not going to have it. But it's what you do in that 50% that determines whether or not you're going to be successful or not. And I believe I read that too. I want to say it was in Heads Up Baseball. I don't know who the pitcher was, but I believe I read the quote in that book by Ken Revisa. But I find myself thinking back. So when you're talking about those things, I think back to my playing career, and the idea behind there's obviously going to be days where I'm going to go with basketball because I didn't play basketball at a high level. So I think that this is a good one to go with, but there'd be days when I would be shooting and I'm on, and it was early in my career. That wasn't a big thing. I wasn't a big shooter, but as I got older, I got better at it. But one of the things that made me, I guess, successful at the level I was playing at is that if I went out and missed my first 2 shots from beyond the arc or whatever, instead of like shutting down, I just said, well, looks like I'm driving to the hole today. And I don't know where that mindset came from me, but the same thing happened with baseball, which I did play. I played in college for baseball. If I was struggling at the plate, seeing the ball, and I go, well, I'm not going to hit hard line drives today. Oh, that guy's playing back. I can lay down a bunt, or I can do something different. And for me, it came naturally. Obviously there wasn't a whole lot of the sports psychology stuff and the talks like that when I was playing. So that's why I like having these conversations, because I don't know how to translate that to my athletes of how to change that mindset, how to switch those things and give them pointers like that. So when you think of things like in percentages and you do that sort of thing, those little tips about being present makes a huge difference in my kids, for me to coach them, to help them and understand. So it's interesting because I think that's what makes athletics interesting, is that people can reach a similar level, but have different mindsets on how they get there and dealing with confidence. And for me, naturally, I just adjusted the way I played, but not everybody does that. And so how do we help those guys who struggle to turn off well, this is just how I play, and try something different? How do we get them to understand there's many ways to make a basket
It goes back to the first piece of advice, trying to get their brains to think positive or productive. You automatically, when you played, it sounds like, thought productively. All right, this isn't working, so what can I do? And I think too often the reverse of that is, this isn't working, so I'm going to stink today, is kind of the mindset. So trying to get them to think positive and productive for any situation, that happens. And I encourage them to try that off of the field as well, because you're just training your brain that way. In the mindset of the law of averages, I played basketball. The one skill I could do was shoot. And my thought process, when I missed a couple of shots, that next one had to be going in, just because of the law of averages. And that was my thought, instead of, oh my gosh, this is such an awful day. So that's one thing I do teach to softball and baseball players. If you're 0 for 2, and people say it all the time, you're due. And I know people argue with me for saying that. I know they're different thoughts, but what we're telling ourselves that we're due, or I haven't got a hit yet, is we're keeping the brain alive. And we're trying to give that brain, get the brain to be able to relax to perform in that present moment. So it all goes back to our self-talk and what are the messages that we're sending. Gloom and doom are something that's positive and can happen.
I like that. And I like that you're due, because I think that's true. Is if this is who you are as a player, the odds are that you're not going to stay as the poor player, the player that's struggling. That's not going to last forever, unless you mentally think that it's going to last forever. Then you struggle longer. But if you have that mindset of, well, next opportunity, it's going to happen. It's going to break through. I'm eventually going to get it. And that kind of goes hand in hand with how I talk to my hitting clients. I had a conversation with one of my clients. She had a good game the day before, but then she went 0 for 5. And so I sent her a text between games. I was like, well, looks like you're due for a couple this game, because odds are, since you're batting 300 and you went 2 for 4, 0 for 5, you're at least going to get one hit in the next 2 at bats. and she ended up going 2 for 3, and it ended up being where she was about a 300 hitter for the weekend. And I was like, you just have to keep that focus on what can I do next. And I think that's valuable.
I would add to that. I use the saying, and I learned it from somewhere. I wish I could give credit, but do you want to be a learner or a loser? And if I've struck out 2 at bats in a row, then a loser hangs their head, thinks they're not going to be able to get a hit that game, or they're just in a bad slump. A learner is thinking, what did I learn? What did I learn from that pitcher? What did I learn from what the ump is calling? So you keep learning, and if you learn enough, then you're going to have success.
I like that. Yeah, because the more we get comfortable with learning and adapting to the environment, the more opportunities we create around us for that success. That's pretty awesome. What I want to do is I want to ask a little bit about, so the This Is Good book. Can you tell me a little bit about what that's about? Because that one intrigued me. I haven't had a chance to read it, but the title had me like really intrigued on where's that going? What's that all about? Because that mindset of this is good, I use it with things that, like, like you said, I get to do this versus I have to do this. And that's what it made me think of, is like, this is good. I can do that. This is good. And so tell me a little bit, am I on the right track, or am I completely off base with that one?
You are completely on the right track. It just sums up everything we've been talking about. And I took the title from an African folktale called This Is Good. And do we have time for me to share the folktale?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
So there was a king in Africa, and he kept his best friend with him no matter where he went, because the best friend would always remind him, this is good. It could be the worst day in the world, but the friend would say, this is good. And so they went hunting one day, and the best friend loaded the king's rifle for him. Well, it backfired and blew the king's thumb off. So the king is irate, and he throws his best friend in jail. All the way to the jail, the best friend was like, this is good. He's in jail, and the other guys in jail are like, you're an idiot. This isn't good. Your best friend just threw you in jail. No, this is good. And Fast forward a year and a half, he's still in jail, and the king goes on another hunting party where they're captured by a band of cannibals. And the cannibals are going to eat them and kill them one by one. But they were very superstitious and did not believe in eating or killing anything that wasn't whole. So when they saw that the king didn't have his thumb, they let him go. And the king was like, oh my gosh, my best friend just saved my life. And he runs back to the prison, gets down on his knees, and begs for forgiveness. Please, please, please forgive me. The best friend, of course, said, this is good. The king said, I know it was good for me. You saved my life, but I've ruined your life. The best friend was like, nope, this was good. You see, if I had been with you, I could have been killed and eaten by the cannibals. And so this is good. And you know what I tell athletes is it's a little dramatic, but what would happen if we all had this is good mindset? This best friend had, whether he was born this way or trained his brain, did not see things as good or bad, just as they were. And he kept his mind live and mentally alive long enough to be able to respond to immediate situations that didn't seem good. And so, I read that about 12 years ago, and it's been my motto for life. And it really has made a difference professionally, personally, in every aspect of my life. And when I want to immediately get upset for that immediate result that's negative, I have to tell myself, okay, this is good. I may not know why it's good right now, but I have to believe it is and keep focusing. And Charles, I can tell you, I cannot think of an example where eventually the this is good hasn't revealed itself. It might be tomorrow, it might be next week, or even a year from now. But it again, keeping that mindset, all right, this happened, this is good.
I absolutely love that. That story hits my life and some of the stories that I've dealt with on so many levels. And I definitely have to try to start to live that a little bit more religiously, because I feel like I do a decent job of staying positive and bad things happen and staying centered. But I like the idea of this is good, because the truth is you're right. We don't know in the moment what something is eventually going to lead us to, So I had some moments where I wanted to play professional baseball. Obviously, that's why I played in college. And when it didn't happen, it really hit me hard, and it was a tough transition. But now that moment, without it, if I would have gone on to play pro, probably wouldn't have met my wife, wouldn't have my 2 kids, wouldn't be a gym owner, wouldn't have gone down that path, and probably wouldn't be coaching the same way that I am now, because I would have had a different trajectory. And who knows if it would have led me back to coaching or not. And I absolutely love the coaching. And that's the thing, is that without those failures or those shortcomings or those bad moments, it doesn't open the doors for the potential good ones later. And we just weren't ready for that success yet. So it wasn't our time. And that's kind of the mindset that I try to keep, is that just because that moment wasn't good by standards of winning or losing, doesn't mean it wasn't good for my growth or my potential next step.
Exactly. And you just summed it up perfectly.
Yeah. No,
I've never seen a championship team not have that one loss that they look back on.
Mm-hmm.
Professionally, there's very few people that I've talked to that have been fired that now aren't like, man, that was a blessing in disguise, or not making, a higher level like you just mentioned. And again, it's the person that can, all right, how do I stay alive mentally for something better? The people that aren't successful are the ones that what they want don't happen. So they throw a pity party and just kind of wallow in the negativity.
Yeah. And that negativity is contagious, and it's infectious, and it causes more and more damage the longer you hold on to it. So it's definitely important to find a way to flush that and stay positive about potential outcomes. And I think that actually leads into, when you have that mindset of, well, this is good, even when it's not, it has to feed into your confidence a little bit, right?
Oh yeah. Just to add to a little bit more about the book, but it also ties in to answer that.
Yeah.
So the book was written about that story, about me sharing it with a team and how it transformed this team. And it shares all the lessons that we learned along our journey. And the season did not turn out any shape, way, or form how they had hoped, but just the power they gained from it was so much better. But it was a soccer team. And every time an opponent would score a goal on them, the entire team would start shouting, "This is good." And it just blew the other team's mind. But what happened, almost to a goal, they would end up scoring shortly after that. Because I think too often, there's not much scoring in soccer.
Right.
And man, they scored and we get down and like now we've got this mountain to climb. But what they did was just shifted their focus to, all right, this is good. So it was amazing to watch and be a part of.
That's an incredible story. I love that. And I think that that's something that so many people could build from and grow from by doing and adapting that mindset. And it could lead to a lot of personal growth and team growth and all those different things. So I'm definitely going to share that story with my team, because I think it's something that, especially at the younger ages, you're going to have a lot of missteps. The game isn't played perfectly. Heck, it's not even played perfectly at the highest level. So I don't know why we expect to play it perfectly at the lower levels. So, but that "this is good" mindset, I think can really snap you out of potentially negative moments and keep you focused on, well, it's going to open a door for something. Right. So,
exactly.
what I want to do now is I want to give you an opportunity to share kind of some of the stuff you got going on right now, where some of my listeners can connect with you and they might be able to find you, and, some different things you'd like to share so that they can reach out and follow along with your journey.
Okay. I have my website, r2lc.com. That's for Refuse to Lose Coaching. On Twitter, which I tend to be the most active, at R2L Coaching. And then I have one just for confidence, and that's at Tami Matheny. Instagram is Refuse to Lose Coaching, all spelled out except for the number 2. And then on Facebook, I have Parents in the Mental Game Facebook group. So any parents listening, I would highly, encourage you to follow that group. Parents have a lot of influence on the mindset. And one of the things that I'm really working on, and at the end of this week, have a seminar for parents coming up, is how parents model, how parents talk really influences how their children talk. And we may not think that, but I can recall my dad coming in and being negative about missing a sale. And that would just, kind of like tell my brain, yeah, I should be negative when things don't work out. He didn't recognize it or realize it, but, really trying to help the parents. You can't completely control your children, but you can really have a strong impact with what you model, your body language, your self-talk. And then also I have This Is Good Facebook group, which just tried to promote the This Is Good mindset every day.
I totally agree that the parenting piece of how you celebrate the kids' successes and their failures pays dividends on their potential outcome. And if you can do it in the right way and you have that positive approach and you're not riding them for stuff that they already know they did wrong. I mean, let's be honest, whenever you played a sport, when you messed up. You don't need to be yelled at for it. Makes a huge impact. So Tami, thank you so much for taking time with me today and my guests. I appreciate it. As always, guys, keep reaching for the stars, fall flat on your face. But remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and join us again next time as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But no matter what happens, remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review our show. We are all on the edge of greatness.